think of human evolution as a 12-hour clock. For 11 hours, 59 minutes, and 45 seconds at that time, we were just hunter-gatherers. Our brains have not had the chance, from an evolutionary point of view, to catch up. So we're still fundamentally hunter-gatherer people. We're living in a post-industrial world now. We've gone through the agricultural, the industrial, now whatever we call now what we're living in. And so we have these ideas, but really fundamentally, evolution hasn't changed. The way we learn, the stages that we learn, we can't hurry that along. And the way we're designed to do that is through play.
If I am trying to do anything with the children, whatever, it could be singing like we did here, and maybe I'm trying to in that way to learn them something about literacy or learn them something about the colors or whatever. When we do it like having fun, and this magic somehow happens, and you know that the children, they took in the vocabulary and they remember it.
Play is probably one of the most important fabrics of life. It's the part that enables you to really emerge as a human being or as an animal. Plays are fundamental. It's what enables us to explore, to encourage, and to find out for ourselves. And if you don't actually build that into your brain development as you go when you're very young, then it can become very sterile.
Kids learn through play, and that's the best way for kids to learn, especially up to 8 years old. Play is the main way of learning.
Playing is a wonderful way of learning. Kids try out things in a playful way. It's you experience. You know, you learn that a ball is round and yet you can tip it over and that it rolls in a certain way. And I was playing, but I learned something too.
Play is actually, you know, it can be a problematic word. Problematic in the way that different people have a different understanding of what a play means. When I speak to my colleagues from the primary school, they, for example, think play in the physical education, that would be, you know, when they're running around, that would be a play. But for us, that's not a play. Play is something that is, it's the child's. It's the right of the child and the child own it.
Children are fascinated by the natural world. It's full of wonder and awe. And when they go to play outdoors, they become the hunters and gatherers. They go and search for sticks and fallen branches, pebbles, rocks, feather, whatever, but it's their choice. It's their ideas. It's what they want to play with. It's what they want to create. And when children play outdoors, all the senses are stimulated.
Play fundamentally is a freely chosen activity. So it looks different for a 2-year-old than it does for a 3-year-old, than it does for a 4-year-old, than it does for a 5-year-old. And it looks different for an adult than it does for a child, because it's something you've freely chosen to do. And how often in our schools do we allow children to freely choose? I mean, often people will say, oh, the children, yes, we make it playful for the children. Playful is different than play. People often talk about the difference between, well, play with a purpose and then free play. No, it's not play unless it's free. So the word free is unnecessary in there. Play is a pure good. It's like love. It's like life. It's like art. It's one of those things we shouldn't have to defend. But we find ourselves defending it all the time in our world.
The current education system is squeezing out play in favour of a sub-Victorian formal education starting far too young, to the detriment of children's mental health, self-confidence, imagination and creativity.
And there's just such a lack of joy in education now. So we need to bring that back. We need to allow them to have that freedom to express themselves. That's how they learn about themselves. That's how they learn about the environment around them. That's how they become this individual, this unique individual. And that's fundamentally important.
I am a bit worried about that we are changing. We are always talking about the play, and we know that it's so important. There's a pressure on the schools, on the teachers, and they feel maybe that they don't have the time, or that they are not doing a proper job if they're not teaching kids special skills instead of discovering with them things. And I think that it makes the kids unhappy, always thinking of, do I have this? Am I good enough?
There's lots of research that says if we start education too early and children struggle with it, that they become disengaged from education and they tend to drop out, and very often they end up in our prison systems.
People have a lot of ideas about this. I think it's a real challenge for people sometimes. Many people who are adult people have no idea what play is. They think they do. They all did it when they were a kid, right? And think it's something that happens when you're a child, and it is true. Now, ideally, we do it throughout our lives, play and continue to engage in these kinds of activities. But play isn't just joy and fun. Play is a very serious thing, and to me, when I think about play, it's a pure good. We should not have to defend play, but those of us in the education world right now are finding ourselves increasingly having to defend play, not only against policymakers who want to turn us into worker training programs or vocational tech institutions, but also from this concept that there are people out there trying to make money off education. They're selling products. They say to you, I can teach your 3-year-old how to read if you get this product, and if you don't buy it, parents are hearing, then your child is behind. And suddenly we have this dynamic where parents are afraid to let their children develop naturally, in their natural habitat, the way their brains are designed to learn.
Children are really good self-risk assessors. We've got to see them as capable and competent.
When the child is fully nurtured, that's the body, the mind and the spirit, there's harmony and balance in their life, and that makes them happy, healthy children. When you take an element out of that, say it's they're not getting enough physical activity, or they're not being allowed the freedom to be creative, then that's when we have problems and we see anxiety creeping in. And there's so much anxiety and depression in young children, and that's because they're not being allowed to be nurtured fully.
In our attempts to protect our young children, we have a generation of anxious children who cannot think for themselves. And a lot of the fear we've got is linked to physical injuries, physical danger. Taking risk in play is a natural coping mechanism. It helps to reduce fears and tackle phobias.
Anxiety, depression, self-harming are all affecting children from an alarmingly young age. When we consider the current education system and all its excessive demands, we know that things have to change.
Lady Allen of Hertwood, to give her full title, is no idle member of the aristocracy. She has built an international reputation as a propagandist for children's play and for the theory of play. Above all, she gets things done.
I'm really a landscape architect by profession, and I've always been interested in the places where people live, their environment, but especially the children, and I think they get a pretty raw deal. What do we give them in our great cities and towns? Built up with asphalt. We give them an asphalt square playground with a few pieces of mechanical equipment. And there they're expected to spend all their adolescent lives swinging backwards and forwards on a swing. It's just not good enough. And it's a problem that had to be solved somehow. Well, then I had a lucky break. I got to Copenhagen in 1945, just after the Great War, And there I saw the first waste material playground in the world, and I realized in a sort of blinding flash of understanding that they'd really solved the problem, because there was the playground that had been made entirely by the children themselves. So when I got back to England, we were all determined to start them over here. And if they are so overprotected that they never meet these challenges and are able to take these risks, I think they'll be the poorer for it when they grow up.
We have this urge to control, to have everything in. I think that's, you know, I think it's not about the children, it's about us. And I think it's always been about us.
All our experience goes to show that a child that is unhappy in whatever situation it may be, is not able to learn, is not able to benefit from the experience around him. And the majority of these children are not only unhappy because of the situation in which they live, but that they're tremendously frustrated because people feel that they're not able to cope.
The brain takes three main ingredients to develop, if one wants to look at it very simply. The first is that you need mental stimulation, so the ability to learn, the ability to explore and so on. Second is good nutrition, so the right food, not just food, but the right kinds of food. There's modern things about 5 a day or 10 a day or whatever. Fresh cooked food served well rather than processed food, which is full of salt and sugars. And the third thing is physical development. The brain develops when you exercise, when you're outside, when you're involved in air and water and all the other good things that are provided outdoors and in, frankly. Those are the ingredients that make brains. And if you don't get, again, that right in the first 4 or 5 years, then what then follows is something that's very, very difficult to put right.
I think what would happen if they were not allowed to play would be that this element of joy, it would disappear and the anxiousness would come instead.
And now it's up to 1.25 million children and young people currently experiencing a mental health problem in the UK. 27% jump in hospital admissions for self-harm from children aged 3 years old.
I think the top-down approach, which is still very much prevalent today, of saying, okay, we need to push education down further and further, is fundamentally flawed. That what we need to do is push learning further and further up. I've seen so many secondary classes where children are so bored with what's going on because they don't know how to enjoy learning. And if they don't know how to enjoy learning, you're not going to teach them anything, or very limited amounts. You might teach them by rote to pass an exam, but it's not about learning life skills.
I often, when I teach, I take things just like this and say to my students, what can this be? And, how are you going to use it? This is a man. Yeah. Hi. Ah. And then I start playing, and they look at me.
And I think that we, the grown-ups, shouldn't be so serious. We should let ourselves be playful and enjoying their company and being kids again and discovering something new and magical every day.
So I think it's important that we also maybe try to use this way to get the parents to understand. Because if you win the parents, they are the people that are going to be our collaborators.
If you enjoy things, you learn so much better and you remember so much better than if it's a project. It makes you nervous when you know you have to, am I as good as the next one? But if you're learning through your interest and through play and joy, it just comes naturally.
Playing outdoors is fundamental to early childhood education. When children play outdoors, the whole being is being nurtured. That's the body, the mind, and the spirit.
kids' lives today, especially in those Western, like Nordic countries in Western Europe. We have these really busy lives with like a lot of distraction all the time. Like you have to go there, you have to get there, you have to be there at some time. Everybody's like going somewhere, you're always going from A to B. So for me, giving children the time and space to just be, not always doing, just being. I sometimes say to be, not to do. And yeah, I think that's really important, especially with these busy lives.
I think one of the problems today we're facing in not just early childhood education but in childhood in general is that technology is replacing some of that play that they had outdoors, and that is having an effect on their health and well-being. We need to get back to nature. We're part of nature and we cannot understand that unless we're actually playing and being immersed in the natural world.
It's so important, especially for our youngest generation. I think there's a strong misunderstanding that children nowadays need so much noise, so much color, and so much speed. You know, look at television work that the frames have to change every second, and I think it's a very strong misconception. It is as people would believe children are stupid, that they need this bombardment, but children are very intelligent. I mean, just think about it. They learn to speak within a year. They learn to work, to walk and to speak, a new language, and so they're highly intelligent, highly observant. But it needs time, it needs space, it needs space to breathe and take in. And when we overload the senses of a young child, I don't think we do them justice.
In Denmark, it's like the approach there is more play-based when you're starting school. So you have this whole year, you're part of the school, but there is not the pressure of learning to read this first year.
When they are describing the school of the future, from this 21st century, base of that, we need to think anew, and we have to think more about people working with their hands and combined working, and the good life and virtuous life, all of those things that are now in the primary and in educational field. We have that kind of a school. You don't have to make it up. We have it. It's called preschool. We just have to take the way we work in the preschool, the methods and the methodology we use in the preschool and use it in the primary school, and trust it. And trust that children actually learn. But I think we are more afraid of, I don't know what we are afraid of, that children won't learn. But we have to trust in the play.
I've got a feeling you've got to try everything once. If it works, wonderful. If it doesn't work, scrap it.
Would I have a nursery that didn't have a garden outside? And the answer is absolutely not. Do I know day nurseries that have got no space outside? And the answer is absolutely yes. Fundamentally, again, it's about not having the right resources for the children, whether it's staff or whether it's the outdoors or whether it's the kind of equipment you're using, that will fail those children.
What we need to do, we need to get the grown-ups more into learning through play. And maybe then they will be able to see how much we learn through play.
Children really need to be playing, need to be choosing for themselves, to need to be engaging with their natural world around them in the context of community. That needs to be slowed down. We spend so much time, and it makes me angry. We spend so much time getting children ready for the next step instead of meeting them right where they are. People are always talking about school readiness. We need to have them ready for school. No, that's the school's job to get them ready for school. Our job is to create a space where they can be 4, where they can be 5, where they can be 2. And be the fully formed human beings they are.
you.